My name's Leona from Supra ConsciousSoul, and this is your Divine Masculine, Divine Feminine reading for mid-October 2017. So, the Divine Feminine is coming in with the Dissolving Light card. This is the universe asking her to be the light. It's asking her to share her light. It's also asking her to speak in her truth, to share her light of truth, and also to realize that in light in herself, she is also light in the divine masculine and helping towards divine union. This is about being that light, shining it. So that's the overall energy for the divine feminine. For the divine masculine, he has Passion of the Wild Red Mother, and it's 36. Now this talks about him being able to kind of connect to his red, that passion, in order to it's about connecting to that passion again, allowing himself to be a little bit silly, allowing himself to laugh, allowing himself to dance. It's like taking him to a different headspace, perhaps. This is more firing up the passion. This is the universe telling him that he needs to stir into action, that there's things going on, that there's things moving, something's stirring his passions. So, for the first row of the Divine Feminine, we have That Which Never Dies. This is card 30. Now, what this talks about is that the Divine Feminine could be putting a lot of her focus and input onto material things, onto everyday things, not connecting so much with the divine, not connecting with meditation in a way that she should. It talks about this woman who has a child who dies, and she says, look, I was living everything for my child. Now what do I do? What do I do now my child has gone, sort of thing? I've got nothing to live for, bring him back. And it was about, the wisdom that she got was about connecting to things that are infinite, things that can't be taken away, things like meditation, things like breath work, things like internal focus. It's asking her to connect more with the divine, with the presence, with the meditations, with positive thoughts, rather than to connect in an everyday, possibly like material way, putting our hopes and faiths. Well, we can't do it today because X, Y, and Z in the material world is stopping us. This is asking you to take a little time to connect back to yourself again. Okay, so her second card is meditation. So this is asking her to look deeper into meditation, to look at the details of meditation, to realize that negative thoughts are bringing in negative manifestations, to realize that it's about connecting with herself, connecting with the divine, sending positive messages to the divine masculine, sending love. It's about the small details. It's about looking at the senses. She's been asked to look at her 5 senses. She's been asked to look at little details, like where did she put her shoes in terms of her umbrella. It's like people don't often remember the little details within their day. It's like this card is asking you to look around, Divine Feminine, and be aware of the little details, the little signs, the little things that are bringing you back to a state of mindfulness. So for the Divine Masculine, we have the 6 of Swords. Now this talks about the divine masculine leaving one state of mind. This talks about him leaving the mental anxieties, the mental overstimulation, the mental conflicts behind and moving to another state, another state, maybe emotional, maybe physical, but it's asking the divine masculine to get out of his headspace and to kind of move away from things. This card also talks about the translation of language. This talks about a connection. It can talk about a connection, a translation of language such as light language perhaps. It talks about that connection. It talks about dealing with things in another language is a way of moving away from what is really going on. It's like it's a way to release. It's a way to move to a calmer place. So then he also has the Ten of Swords. Now this is him totally in his mind. This is also, there's a saying that goes with this card that is, if you see Buddha, kill Buddha. It's about not following anyone. He's in a state where he feels like he's not following anyone and he's following himself. He's seeing where his mind is at. He's battling with certain mental processes, certain thought patterns, certain anxieties, certain stresses, certain worries, regrets. These are all in focus, but it's asking you to move away from that, divine masculine. So for the divine feminine, we have the Foolish Heart, which is card 22, which is also like a twin flame number. But it talks about sometimes allowing ourselves to be a little bit foolish. It talks about sometimes our heart being, our mind is overridden by our heart. It talks about the fact that sometimes out of the mouths of fools come wisdom because they speak in truth, and sometimes out of the wise people can sound like fools at time as well. It talks about just allowing yourself to be a little bit more innocent, a little bit more open, allowing ourselves to make mistakes, allowing ourselves to be transparent, to be open. Okay, yeah, so I forgot, yeah, the Ten of Swords is also about asking the masculine to communicate his truth, to communicate clearly, to communicate as a way to move on from a situation that's in his mind. So for the divine feminine, we have greed. Now this is card 6, and it's not talking about greed in a physical sense or in a hungry sense. It's more about the divine feminine not rushing to the end goal. It's about telling her to be in the present, to be in the now, to not focus on how to get enlightened, perhaps because when it comes, it just comes. That's the message. It's not about the search. It's not about, well, I've meditated 100 hours, so why have I not got anywhere? It's not about that. It's about a journey of discovery, and it's also about learning how to dance in the moment. Okay, so for the divine masculine, we have the Ten of Cups. Now this talks about as above, so below. It also talks about him using his 5 senses. It talks about him feeling his passions. It talks about not only the higher levels of emotional fulfillment, but the lower levels, the lower intoxications, the addictions, the compulsions. It's about them passions, and there's this energy of him fighting between those passions this month, and this energy of him learning how to trust his passions, because this card talks about in order to trust somebody else, first we must trust ourselves, or first we must learn to trust ourselves. So the second card he's got is the Knight of Swords. Now this talks about moving away from things. It talks about mentally. It talks about compartmentalizing ideas, putting them to one side and then following through. It talks about visiting the ideas as opposed to wallowing in them. It's about that energy of movement forward and taking ideas to a next level, because it also talks about manifestation with this card. It talks about your thoughts being able to be written there, your thoughts being manifested as you speak, Divine Masculine. It talks about a need to use your thoughts in a more communicative way, or in a way where you can manifest positively. So for the Divine Feminine, she has 43, wishful thinking. This is talking about, imagine that you're sitting under a tree and you can have any wish that you want, Divine Feminine. This is saying that your thoughts are manifesting on a rapid rate, but that is also not only positive, but that is negative too. So there's a story that goes with this card that talks about a guy sitting under this wish tree, and he decides to wish for food first, and he's like, yeah, this is good. So he's eating the food, and then he decides to wish for some wine, and he drinks all the wine and he becomes drunk. But then he gets a bit paranoid while he's drunk, and he's like, oh my God, maybe there's ghosts here, and he manifests ghosts. And then his paranoia manifests further until he says, oh my God, maybe they'll kill me. The man died. So it's about you manifesting, you using your brain to manifest positively, whether that's towards the union or towards life in general. Then we have renewal. Now what this talks about is a guy goes away to get enlightened. He leaves his child who he's never seen before and goes on his travels. He comes back 12 years later, enlightened. But his wife said, well, why didn't you stay here and do it? And he was like, well, that way, at least this way, now it's like you can see that I've changed and now you can follow me. It's almost like he had to go on that journey. He had to go and find himself, and he realized that he could have stayed at home and probably become enlightened, but maybe he wouldn't have had the same respect and following from his family. It's about him needing to do something that he had to do. It's like he needed to do that. Okay, for the Divine Masculine, it talks about him growing his seeds and what he wants in terms of passions. It talks about it budding and flowering, whatever he wants to grow. It's about him using that energy to manifest in his passions this month. It's about him using that energy to push forwards. It's about it's about movement forwards. So then next to that we have the Two of Wands. Now this can talk about opposing energies, opposing fractions. It can also talk about alchemy in the sense that the process where you grind something like salt down to something which is a little bit more malleable, a little bit more refined perhaps, and easier to deal with. It talks about the Divine Masculine getting past those fractions and then digesting it in smaller amounts perhaps, and then it's about using that energy to manifest forwards or to move forwards with the Two of Wands. So for the male and female, we have the last card, which is 22, the Lion and the Deer. Now this is talking about the aspects that we have within us, but I'm going to quickly read it from the book. I've highlighted a bit of the bits that we should listen to. So it says, let us embark on this studious adventure together. Let us honour the tiger and the lamb within each other, the lion and the deer. I witness in you both the raging warrior who fights with unbreakable honour, and the healer who brings together those things torn apart. We must be willing to come with mad passion, crazy enough to chase the great beloved, even if it means forgetting who we are for a time. To have the sacred delight of rediscovery, breaking some rules and looking like fools. Let us be fools for love together. Thank you. Hope this has helped. Take care.